There is a town in Florida made up almost entirely of sex offenders. It's by design, and it might surprise you that they have been accepted by the surrounding community, even embraced. Well, tonight, the story not of the crimes these men committed or of the damage done to their victims, but the lives they have carved out for themselves among their own kind. First Coast News investigative reporter Ann Schindler reports from Pahokee, Florida.
Miles from anywhere and surrounded by thousands of acres of sugarcane is the tiny community of Miracle Village, a safe haven for the most despised people on earth.
No, I don't want to have anything to do with a sex offender. No, those are special place in hell for those people.
It's a population that evokes such hatred and fear. Even other sex offenders feel it.
I was definitely nervous about moving into a community of sex offenders.
The village was created by and for sex offenders, who in Florida are prohibited from living near any place that children might gather.
A lot of us could not live at our houses because either a playground was next to it, or a bus stop, or a school.
And what's the alternative? Homelessness?
For residents, the miracle of the village is just finding a place to call home. But for the town of Pahokee, the real miracle is the way attitudes have changed.
I was angry. Had I ever known a known sex offender in my life? No. Did I ever want to? No. Did I want them in my church? Hell no.
But Linda Moss says everything changed
Ash Wednesday?
the day she heard Chad Stoffel sing. The music affected Linda, but also changed her.
Like I said to you about the pit bulls, you only hear about the bad ones. Well, it's like the sex offenders. You only hear about the heinous crime ones.
People freak out. They freak out because they don't know what to think. They almost feel like maybe we're going to be dangerous and we're going to attack them or attack their children, and that's simply not true. That's not what we're about.
In fact, according to the Bureau of Justice statistics, sex offenders as a group are less likely than others to reoffend, and local law enforcement says Miracle Village has never been a crime problem.
And they've seen what our village has done. 7 years, 8 years, okay? Nobody's been raped, killed, or murdered.
Might be the safest place to live.
Part of that may be because some residents, like Christopher Dawson, don't fit the stereotype of a typical sex predator.
I was dating a girl who lied to me about her age, found out that day she was 14 years old.
Of course, many stories are harder to hear.
I was one of the top racquetball coaches in the world, and I started messing around with some of my students.
I was charged with lewd and lascivious molestation and lewd and lascivious battery.
I spent almost 13 years in prison for molesting my granddaughter, my step-granddaughter. She was 12 years old at the time. It's tough. It's tough to deal with, to know you're capable of committing that kind of a crime.
But forgiveness comes from all corners, including former victims.
When I was 11, I was molested by one of my dad's friends.
But despite that experience, Margaret Smart has fallen in love with Harry Folger, a registered sex predator and a resident of Miracle Village.
But no, I knew Harry as a person, not as a criminal.
The two met at a picnic 2 years ago
He stuck to me like glue.
and fell in love almost immediately.
I think we're more like teenagers than anything else.
That night. Yeah, we really were.
Pastor Patty Opperly of Pahokee's United Methodist Church was also a victim of a sex crime.
When I was a teenager, I was molested by, good family friend of the parents. Never told a soul. I mean, because it must have been my fault.
But she believes in second chances, and she so trusts the men she knows from the village, she once gave them her house keys to set up an after-church dinner.
Well, Paul and I are finishing something up here, and I don't remember what it was, and all of a sudden he looked at me and he said, "Do you realize our daughter's home alone with 11 sex offenders?" I was like, huh.
It's a view that some might find incomprehensible, but one rooted in faith.
The folks that are here in the village, they're in counseling, they've gone to jail, they've faced their accusers, they've been humiliated, mortified, and they're repentant.
The hardest thing in the world for me to do was the first time I stood up there and said I'm a sex offender. you know, because everybody said, oh, you know. Now, I don't care. I want people to know. I was a sex offender, I'm not currently.
Some of us made a mistake in our lives and we have to own up for it, but we're still human beings. We're still children of God.
I mean, if we punish us, yeah, punish us, and we'll pay our debt. But once we get through that, we'd love a chance to just move on with our lives and try to start again, like almost every other type of person out there.
You got to dig, I guess the best way to put it is down deep in your heart and say, really, what's right? What's right here? What are we called to do as Christians? What are we called to do? If I don't love a sex offender, then I'm not loving Christ.
Ann Schindler, First Coast News, NBC 12, ABC 25.